No one was expecting this. Just days after the world began mourning the death of Pope Francis, something unexpected happened that left even the most loyal and devoted Catholics in shock. His sister, Maria Elena, who had stayed out of the public eye for years, decided to break her silence. What she revealed wasn't just emotional, it brought up hidden truths about Pope Francis that the world had never known. As the world paid tribute to the man many considered a symbol of compassion and humility, Maria Elena's words painted a more complicated picture of her brother. Her memories revealed not only personal emotions and regrets but also a side of Pope Francis that had remained carefully hidden from the public. This wasn't just about his spiritual life or papal duties. It was about his childhood, his family, and the weight of secrets he carried all the way to the highest office in the Catholic Church. When Pope Francis passed away at the age of 88, people around the world remembered him as a leader who stood for love, simplicity, and justice. From every corner of the globe, people praised his humility and dedication. But then Maria Elena came forward. For many years, she had remained quiet, living a peaceful life in Argentina far away from the media. She never took advantage of her brother's fame and never tried to gain attention. But after he died, something in her changed. She felt she could no longer stay silent. Her words were not shaped by Vatican press officers, nor were they polished by media professionals. They came straight from her heart, unfiltered, emotional, and filled with raw honesty. In her first appearance on television since Pope Francis passed away, Maria Elena began speaking with tears in her eyes. She said, "He wasn't just the Pope to me. He was Jorge, my brother. He was the boy who chased dogs in our backyard, who made me laugh when I was sick, who cried when our father died." She paused for a moment, as if the memories were too much. Then she said something that stunned the room, "I never wanted him to become Pope. It cost us more than the world will ever know." That sentence caught everyone off guard. What did it mean? What had becoming Pope really cost them? Why had she never said this before? Suddenly, people everywhere began asking questions. Journalists and church followers started digging into Maria Elena's life. What had she kept hidden all these years? Why now? And why were her words so full of sorrow and regret? But that was only the beginning. What she revealed next became headline news around the world. It wasn't about the Vatican's inner politics. It wasn't about church teachings or theological debates. It was about something much deeper: family, sacrifice, and the hidden pain behind her brother's holy image. Maria Elena continued speaking, and what she said allowed the world to see a new side of the man who would become Pope Francis. She didn't speak as a public figure. She spoke as a sister filled with memories of a boy named Jorge Mario who grew up in Buenos Aires. According to her, Jorge was a quiet child who always seemed to carry something heavy inside him. Even as a little boy, he was deeply thoughtful, and she believed he was born with a sense of responsibility that weighed on him constantly. But she also said something that changed how people saw his path to the priesthood. Before Jorge ever thought about the church, there was someone else who shaped his spiritual heart: their grandmother Rosa. Maria said Rosa was a strong woman who believed deeply in justice, truth, and morality. She had powerful opinions and a passion for doing what was right. It was Rosa who first sparked something spiritual inside Jorge. But then Maria shared something that nobody expected. She said that both of them, Jorge and herself, went through a painful trauma as children. It wasn't a religious crisis, it was a family betrayal. And according to her, this betrayal changed the course of Jorge's life forever. She didn't go into full detail, but she said it had to do with their father and a terrible family secret, a second family that had been kept hidden for years. Jorge found out about this when he was only 12 years old. That discovery shattered something inside him. According to Maria, from that moment, Jorge lost his innocence. He began searching for righteousness and morality, not just in religion, but as a way to deal with the shame he felt from his family's secret. She said, he didn't run to God because he felt called. He ran because he was trying to escape the shame. That statement changed everything. For so many people, Pope Francis was seen as a holy man who lived with humility because of his faith. But what if his humility was also a form of personal punishment? What if he felt guilty not for what he had done, but for what his family had hidden? Maria's words forced people to see Pope Francis in a new light, not just as a man of God, but as a human being trying to find peace within himself. And just when the public thought the most shocking part of her story was over, Maria suggested there was even more. She said, "There's something the Church would prefer I never speak about." Those words sent chills down people's spines. What could be so powerful that even the Church didn't want it shared? She then spoke about something Pope Francis had kept hidden his entire time as Pope, a private file, known within the Vatican as Illinois Dossier Nascosto, the hidden file. Maria said that her brother had collected documents, letters, and recordings during his years as Archbishop in Argentina and as Pope. These files were not made public, and even his closest advisors didn't know what was inside. But Maria knew because, years before he became Pope, Jorge visited her in Argentina and gave her a letter and a key. The letter was mysterious. It said, "If anything happens to me, and the world starts asking why I stayed silent, tell them to look beyond the gold and marble. Tell them to look where even light avoids the corner." Maria never opened the letter or used the key, not until the morning her brother died. Out of respect for his wishes, she had kept it hidden. But once she opened it, she found something that shook her to her core. It was a confession. Jorge wrote that he had discovered things inside the Vatican that broke his heart. He found a network of financial corruption, abuse cover-ups, and secret deals with powerful governments. He didn't name specific people in the letter, but he left enough clues for Maria to understand how serious it was. He had chosen silence not because he was part of the corruption, but because he feared that if he exposed everything, the entire church might fall apart. He believed it was better to change the church slowly from within. But in his final years, he began to regret that decision. He once told Maria, "Maybe I was too soft. Maybe I should have been the Pope who ended the lies, not protected them." That alone would have been enough to shake the faith of millions. But then Maria revealed something even more chilling. In the weeks before his death, Jorge had tried to make arrangements to have the hidden file released after he died. But something or someone interfered. The file vanished. Vatican officials claimed it never existed. No one wanted to talk about it. But Maria insists it's real. She believes there are powerful people who are terrified of what's in it. And now the biggest question is, what was in that file that made even a pope afraid? The answer might be in what Jorge told Maria just before he died. In his final hours, as the world prepared for his funeral, he whispered something that shook her deeply. He didn't talk about church politics or power. He talked about children. He said, "Promise me you'll tell them. Not just about the file, but about the children." Maria was confused and asked what children he meant. Jorge looked at her, weak and barely able to speak, and said, "The ones who were never counted. The ones the church failed. The ones I couldn't save." Maria says that was the most heartbreaking moment of her life. In those words, her brother was admitting something deeply painful. It wasn't just about files or corruption. It was about the children who were hurt, ignored, and forgotten by the church. Children whose abuse was never reported because they lived in poor villages, far from big cities. Children whose pain was hidden because it didn't fit the church's image. Jorge had tried to find these hidden tragedies. He had tried to bring them justice. But in the end, he felt he had failed. Maria says that Jorge's biggest regret wasn't about power or politics, it was that he hadn't been able to protect the most vulnerable. In his heart, he believed that this failure would be his greatest sin. And that's why, on his deathbed, he made her promise to tell the truth. To not let those children be forgotten. To speak out even if the church wanted her silent. Now, Maria says she is determined to honor her brother's final wish. She wants the world to know the truth, not to destroy faith, but to build it on honesty and compassion. She says that Pope Francis was not just a holy man. He was a human being, full of pain, carrying burdens most of us will never understand. And in his final days, he didn't care about titles or legacy. He only cared that the truth be told. As she continues to speak out, some in the church are trying to discredit her. Others are trying to protect her. But one thing is certain, her words have changed how people see Pope Francis. They've shown that behind the robes and rituals was a man who tried, failed, regretted, and still hoped. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes him more powerful than we ever knew. Not because he was perfect, but because he was real. And because even in his last breath, he was still trying to do the right thing. In a quiet house in Buenos Aires, Maria keeps a simple wooden chest that contains what might be the most important journal in modern church history. Inside that chest are handwritten pages from Pope Francis himself. These are his private journals from the last 2 years of his life. They are filled with personal thoughts, warnings written in code, and references to people and events that no one else has seen before. What makes these journals so powerful is not just that they were written by a pope, but that he chose to write them when he knew his time was running out. Maria remembers a phone call they had in 2023. Jorge had just been in the hospital and told her, "I don't know how much longer they'll let me speak freely, but my hand still works. I'll write what my voice can't say anymore." What he wrote shocked her. One of the first pages began with the words, "The wolves are circling. My silence is no longer peace, it is fear dressed up as obedience." From that moment on, the journal becomes a story of a man growing weaker in body but stronger in his fight for truth. Jorge wrote about meetings with powerful church leaders who told him to stop talking about old abuse cases. They urged him to protect the church's unity instead of chasing justice. But Jorge believed that staying silent meant becoming part of the problem. One of the most emotional entries says, "To protect the institution by denying the truth is to crucify Christ again. I've looked into the eyes of victims. I've listened to their stories. And now they ask me to stay diplomatic. But I wasn't made Pope to keep secrets. I was made Pope to serve God." He never meant to keep these words hidden. In one of their last talks, he asked Maria to share some parts of the journal when the time was right. But Maria isn't sure when that time will come. Since his death, she says she's received many messages. Some were polite requests. Others felt like threats. These messages came from people connected to the church or hidden groups who want her to give up the journal. They tell her it would be better for the church if the journal was kept secret. They say it could cause pain and confusion if people misunderstood what Jorge wrote. But Maria believes she knows what her brother meant. The truth, she says, always brings discomfort before it brings healing. The final entry in the journal is the most chilling. It was written just 3 days before Jorge died. It's short, like a farewell and a warning at the same time. It says, "If this is my final breath, let it not be in vain. The shepherd must not fear the dark, for wolves howl loudest when they sense the morning." Maria hasn't released the full journal, but she let a few journalists see some parts. One of them, an Italian reporter named Luca Morilai, called it the most powerful piece of writing about inner conflict in the Vatican he had ever seen. He believes that if the entire journal is confirmed as real, it could start worldwide debates, not just in the Catholic Church but among people everywhere. And that's not all. In the same chest, Maria found a sealed envelope with the words "In Case of Betrayal" written on it. Even Maria doesn't know what's inside. She says she won't open it until she's sure it won't be stolen or destroyed. Some people think it may contain voice recordings, secret testimonies, or names of those involved in the power struggle Jorge hinted at. Now that Cardinal Matteo Tedesco, the very man Jorge feared, is rising in power, Maria is more conflicted than ever. Should she share what her brother left behind, or should she keep it safe and let the world remember him as a quiet, dignified leader? This story takes its most heartbreaking turn with one last piece. Maria recently said that she's been contacted by families of abuse survivors. They're begging her to release the journal. They believe Jorge wrote down things no one else had the courage to say. They think he might have named the people who escaped punishment. For these families, this journal isn't just a piece of history. It's a chance for healing. It's hope. So now the question isn't whether Pope Francis was silenced. The question is whether his written words will still be heard, whether the truth he carried in his heart and mind will finally come to light, and whether his sister will find the strength to share it with the world, even if it changes everything. Thanks for watching. Keep it and stay tuned. Like and subscribe our channel. Have a good day.